everybody. My name is Ann Rossley. I'm here with Kyle Harvey. We are colleagues and friends working in Baird & Warner's Gold Coast office, and we love to talk about real estate in downtown Chicago. How's that? Okay, and the first thing we do every week is we talk about stats. So I'm going to pull up stats here. There we go. All righty. So this is the weekly market snapshot for real estate, and this is the multiple listing service. So this is everything, not just downtown Chicago, but I wanted to just kind of show you the week of July 4th through 11th, lots fewer closed listings. Not surprising because it's the holiday, although it is lower than the year before during that week. Listings under contract, lower a little bit than last year's frenzy, not by a whole lot. 2,860 properties went under contract. In terms of actives, this is active homes on the market. There are 49,000 properties on the market in the area, quite a few. Inventory is increasing. But let's look at single-family homes. Last time we talked about the lakeshore, lakefront communities. Today we're going to focus on single-family homes, and we're going to consider only North Chicago Township and Lakeview Township. North Chicago is basically near North and Lincoln Park neighborhoods, and Lakeview is everything from Fullerton up to Devon, from the lake, and then west to Western. So as you can expect, much more condos in the North Chicago Township, but we're just going to focus on single family homes. The median sales price for North Chicago is less than Lakeview at $1.2 million versus $1.225 million. But I want to clarify that. And Kyle, you know what the answer is, but I'll just spout it out. This is a median. If you look at average sales price, North Chicago is higher because we have the Gold Coast mansions that go for so much more. But you can see the
Lincoln Park homes that go for so much more.
Pardon me?
Lincoln Park homes, a lot of them go for a whole lot more too. Yes.
Exactly right. So
yeah.
Right. So if you're looking at the median sales price, though, they're both around $1.2 million. All right. Single family. I didn't get rid of us, did I? There we go. There we go. Get rid of our names so you can see the whole chart. All right. Single family homes for sale. North Chicago, 131 in the red there. Lakeview, 111, down 29 to 33% versus previous year. Not many homes for sale. Single family homes. Now, I find this relationship very interesting. Look at this. 131 versus 111 homes for sale, but under contract, 607 and 599. That's because homes on the market is a snapshot.
Right.
And they go on and they come off so quickly. So that's why. But see, we are declining in the number of homes a little, but look how high this is compared to previous years and months. Still so much higher than in
yeah. But remember, in those years, the difference between where we are now and those years is there was so much more on the market then.
Right. But
now we are having that kind of under contract data point with almost nothing on the market.
But we felt like 2018, 2019 were healthy years here.
Yeah, but there were 2018, 2019, they were slower than 2017 and 16. I remember it.
Sure.
I remember
Sure. But
yeah,
still.
But there were more homes for sale. There was better inventory.
Absolutely right. Absolutely. Yeah. All right. Homes closed in that same range, 639 and 628. So we're still very high. This number is still higher than the highest in Lakeview in 2018. I mean, look at that. And then, we're still very good. All right. Price per square foot. I thought this is an interesting number. We often talk about condos in the luxury market being $1,000 per square foot. A single family home is averaging 353 to 368 per square foot, and still higher than last year at this time. And you can
It's
see
still
the healthy
so
increase.
affordable compared to other markets. It's just amazing how affordable Chicago is compared to other markets.
Absolutely right.
Big our homes are. That the median sales price for these homes is 1.2 million at 386 square feet. Those are big houses.
Right. Very good point. This is the month's supply of homes for sale, and you can see it's very low. We talk about a market that is neither a buyer nor seller market being at 5.5 to 6 months worth of homes for sale. We currently have between 2 and 2.5 months worth of homes for sale. So not much inventory. Single family homes showings per month. So interestingly, when you talk about closings, you're like 60 days behind of what's currently happening. When you're talking pending, you're talking anywhere from last week to 2 months ago. When we look at showings, that's looking at the very last month. So it's the most current information we have. And it's talking about foot traffic. So the average single family home's getting between 5 and 6 showings per month. And, it's still pretty high here, Kyle. Look at that. Everybody talks about things are slowing, but that's pretty high.
Yeah. No, it
So,
is.
I mean, down here, we were averaging less than 3 a month. So single family home in 2017 was getting a couple showings a month.
But it's also interesting to see how many showings to contract for houses. So in a period like 2021, which was a crazy market, you had a ton of showings before contract because everyone came in on that week. I mean, it's like bam, and then we're under contract in a day. But I wonder how I would find it very interesting to look at the stat of comparing showings to contract over time, because with so few houses, if you have 5 and you've got a contract after, God bless.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely right. All right.
Yes. Okay. Well, thank you for those stats. Very interesting about our housing market in those 2 lakefront townships. I was going to say neighborhoods, but they're not.
Townships, right.
Now we're going to talk about the market generally, and so we're talking about the national market right now. So Chicago is, and we're going to talk about Chicago too. First of all, we're going to talk about sentiment. Everyone, bases their view of the market on what happened last year. And we do that. Like, we show what it last year, but it's great when you show trends, and so you can really see how things go. Right now, everyone's like, "Oh my God, the market's dead."
No,
it's finally normal. Is that your experience, Anne? You've been doing this for so long. What's
No, it's totally my experience that I've been doing it so long.
In a positive way.
Thank you. Typically in the summer, realtors can catch their breath a little bit because things are under contract after the spring market. Things slow down to almost nothing over July 4th weekend. I felt like there was more activity than even a typical July 4th weekend this year. And then we get into the August doldrums, and that's typical. That's not a reason to cry and worry. There's lots of talk in the marketplace about inflation, about, lots of other things that can be impacting the economy, but we need to separate out the housing market. The housing market doesn't necessarily follow all that other stuff. Certainly, the housing market in a recession you don't see huge declines in prices in a recession typically. 2008 was the outlier. So, I was quoting right before we went on the air that we have half the number of showings taking place today versus February of this year. But February was the outlier. That the number of showings we have right now is what's typical in the marketplace. So, I'm excited for buyers today. I'm happy for sellers. I mean, we saw there's still no inventory, but buyers can take a little more time. They don't have to make a decision the day they see the property. For sellers, it's better because you don't have buyers taking a property off the market only to hold it while they think about whether or not they really want it, and then only to put it back on. And it was awful. And people who are doing move up purchases really have a chance to do that now. It's just a healthier environment for us.
I agree. So, and the markets that are really cooling with prices going down really are the ones that were so red hot and got sort of bubblish, and ones that really were impacted by the pandemic.
Yes.
The ones people sort of fled to. So Redfin is reporting the top 10 coolest markets, meaning the ones that have the biggest slowdowns. Number one is San Jose. San Jose has been crazy for so long.
Mm-hmm.
Sacramento, these are a bunch of these are California. Oakland, Seattle, which has been so hot for so long. Stockton, California, which is unusual. That's a smaller inland city, and so it's surprising that got hot and now it's cooling. Boise, Idaho, Denver, interestingly, I always hear people want to move to Denver. San Diego, Tacoma, Washington, where people who can't afford Seattle go live, and San Francisco. So those are the coolest markets.
But again, to your point, cooling means there's this much of a difference between the top and where they are now, right?
Yeah.
But this down here could still be up here, right? So it's really a play on the numbers.
It is a play on the numbers, but it is also, for some of these markets, the first time that they've had to make price cuts, because they've always been like San Jose's been name your price, and that is different. So Redfin talks about the things that are causing or that they attribute, and NAR, the National Association of Realtors, attributes to this higher interest rates. 3% in February versus 6% now. And that's one of the sentiment things. 6% historically was a low interest rate. It's a good interest rate. But right now it seems like a disastrous interest rate when you compare it to the falsely low interest rates that we had and most of us took advantage of. Yes. So, but I'm not going to poo-poo it. On a $450,000 home, you're paying $700 more per month with this 3% higher interest rate. I mean, it's more expensive. Right. Home prices are higher. And so a lot of people are feeling themselves priced out. And so that's especially in some of these other places that finally people are saying, well, I don't necessarily have to live in some of these really high price places.
It's time to adjust expectations, right? On what you can buy.
Yes. The stock market is down. And so people don't feel that they have enough money to put into a down payment. Yeah. Inflation is making the cost of everything higher. And so it's a little frightening. It's hard to justify a higher mortgage because you're sort of like, I'm paying more for gas. Everything's going to cost more. And and the fact that we're all talking ourselves into a recession makes people worried about their employment. Mm-hmm. So, but here are the things that realtors and economists are pointing to counterbalance these things. Rents are rising even higher. I have friends who've told me that their kids who've had these apartments, at Lincoln Commons, up $1,000 a month. Yeah. The new rents, $1,000 up. $12,000 a year more in rental expense. Holy moly.
Some people I've seen them. I think prices are up like 25% or so on rents in Chicago right now. It's crazy.
Inventory is still so low in Chicago that it's going to be hard for prices to drop. People won't be able to name inflated prices, but I don't think a well-priced property price based on comps is going to drop. And employment remains steady and low, and people need housing. So those are things that are just sort of counterbalancing. One, we're back to normal. Two, yes, interest rates are higher, and yes, that's expensive, but they're not out of line. They are actually still really low when you look historically. And in an inflationary period, we look to stabilize our expenses, and one way to stabilize your living expenses to buy a house. So
absolutely right.
So our next topic is a very interesting topic, and you'll tell us more about it. Should condo buildings or co-ops try to change their demographic, try and upgrade themselves? Tell us about
upgrade themselves. Well, yeah. So what brought this conversation up when Kyle and I were preparing for the show is I have a listing in a building where they've done a survey of where they are versus other buildings on Lakeshore Drive. They've decided that they're a C building and they want to make themselves a B or an A building. And, of course, that's just such a subjective, we don't talk about that necessarily, a building being an A or a B or a C. But I mean, just to give you a sense of this, each of the units has those air conditioners that fit into the walls, as many of them from that era do, from the 60s and 70s. You have to walk up steps to get to the roof deck. The last set of stairs, the elevator does not go to the roof deck. It's an older building. It needs facade work. It's got an older looking lobby, common areas. Fitness room isn't, stunning. Some of these newer buildings have fitness areas with great views and so forth. But they decided that they really wanted to not just do the facade work and update the elevators. They wanted to really take it to a new level. Contrast that with these buildings who never do that, never upgrade themselves. Then they have to deconvert because they become so full of renters and absentee landlords that don't want to spend the money. And they get to a place where they just can't upgrade the way they need to. And so somebody comes in and buys the whole building out, redoes it, and makes it apartments. So anyway.
I don't think this building was ever at risk for that. I mean, it was a high C, low
97% owner occupied.
It's how
but
much?
It does have an 97%, but it does have an age. Well, that's because they don't have a rent cap, but they say every owner must live in the unit 3 out of 5 years. So you can't have a long-term investment property there. But many of the people are older, have lived there like 30 years, so they haven't kept up with the assessments.
Or they haven't kept up with it. They don't desire the latest and greatest slice and dice full stuff. No, I get it. Yeah.
But then the question is, can you really bring yourself from a C to an A in the public's perception of you as a building?
But also, that. And can you do it on the backs of one set of owners? Because if it fails, if people are like, that's lovely, but we expected that, and then the prices of the units don't rise to reflect it, because the tricky thing for buildings is you have to stay current and it's the same with houses. You have to stay upgraded to maintain your value, and you have to keep reaching to grow your value. Now,
exactly. Otherwise, people will move to the newer building to upgrade as opposed to staying where they are, right? So to give you a sense, this particular building has resales in the like $250 to $325 per square foot range, if that makes sense. Whereas, like a Vista or a One Bennett, they're over $1,000 per square foot.
Well, this doesn't want to be Vista. Nobody can be Vista. But
can you be the Carlisle, for example? Because the Carlisle is kind of that same era, 1040 Lakeshore Drive. And
so here's some tricky points. But there are a number of units per floor. It's not a limited number. There are tons of units in the building.
Right.
The things that need to be done to make yourself in the mid 300s per floor, which is sort of the Carlisle and beyond, because the Carlisles are much bigger apartments, are the maintenance and the level of service and the attractiveness of the lobbies, of the floor, of the hallways. I don't think of the Carlisle as having many amenities. Does it have any amenities?
Oh, yes. It's got the indoor pool on the roof. It's got a beautiful terrace area. Yeah. Lovely fitness. So no, it's got the amenities. It's highly staffed. I think the thing, but it's kind of the same era as this building. That's why I think they're an interesting comparison. But my question is, the Carlisle doesn't have the air conditioners sticking out.
Does it not?
Can any building be an A building if you have those electric air conditioners? No.
I don't think so. But here's the problem for this building and for any building with those air conditioners. One of the great things about those air conditioners is they don't take up space. You don't lose ceiling height. You don't lose a closet. You don't lose wall space. They are just tucked into the wall. And they are as ugly as can be. And they scream a certain year, and they scream sort of low rent. But they are very effective for other reasons. And so I think unless there is a beautiful way to disguise them, I don't think a unit is ever going to fetch those kinds of prices. I mean,
right.
1000 Lakeshore Drive, which is really 1040 Lakeshore Drive, the one on the corner of Bellevue.
No.
Yeah.
You mean 1000 Plaza or 1000 Drive?
So 1000 Drives, the smaller, less appealing building with a ton of units, is actually, its real address is 1040. Who knew? Or 1010. No. 1010, excuse me, 1010. 1010 Lakeshore Drive that's the name of their association. It's 1010 Lakeshore Drive. And that was until they took over, when the other one called themselves Lakeshore Plaza, they took over 1000 Lakeshore Drive. Anyway, they have those wall units.
Right.
And that building trades, in the very low. And it's never going to be a nice building, but they don't aspire to it. They do very well in terms of turnover, things sell quickly, etc. But it's never going to be a fancy building. And I have
to tell you, no, I'm with you 100%. And I actually think, don't you think, Kyle, if every building along Lakeshore Drive were an A building, then it would price out the average Joe from being able to have a Lakeview condo on Lakeshore Drive. I think it's fine.
Well, I think it's a great little pied-à-terre place for somebody who wants to have a place in the city. Right. Well, I agree with you. And we shouldn't only have fancy pants buildings, to use a technical term.
That's right.
In our city, along our lake. I completely agree with you.
Now, they do need to stay up with the times, facade-wise and whatever.
I agree. And I think some of the changes that they're thinking about are great. But this building that you're talking about, it's a huge special assessment.
Yeah.
Considering that you've got people who've been living there 30 years who are on a fixed income, and considering that some of these owners, this was their entry-level property, and it's going to wipe out their equity.
Yeah. No question about it. Yeah. So a 3-bedroom there has a $42,000 special assessment. Yeah. And that doesn't include if they bring the elevator to the top, then that's going to be money on top. So I don't know. It's an interesting thing. And then the question is, were they behind and not keeping up before? And so now they're playing catch up. That could be part of it as well. Right.
Yeah.
My final thought on this is there are some kinds of heating and cooling that are just preferred. And buying, it's kind of like, I guess, in the suburbs, buying into buildings like buying in a subdivision, right? Certain subdivisions, just based on the size of the lots and the amenities of the subdivision, just are more highly prized than other subdivisions. And it's the same thing in the city. View being something, heating and air being part of it, and some other factors, amenities, views, etc.
So now we're going to go and talk about, we're now adding to this show advice for new agents. Both of us have new agents in our office who ask us questions. And so here's some advice for new agents. And Anne, how do you advise your buyer clients about inspections? What do you tell them before?
Well, I tell them to, number one, do an inspection with a professional. And, I tell them to expect that there's things wrong with that. Even new construction has things that an inspector is going to find. Their job is to find it. Their job is also not just to see if there are problems with the home, but to help you understand how to maintain the home, how to, maintain the furnace, how to, deal with your appliances. What's the typical lifespan of your roof or your furnace or whatever. So it's a learning experience for them. Not so much in a renegotiation.
Exactly. Well, and one of the things I say to my clients when they don't have an inspector in mind is let's find an inspector who has good judgment, who's a good teacher. So that they're thorough, but they're also somebody who's going to teach you how to use a dishwasher. Because sometimes these dishwashers are tricky. Or going to teach you, to your point, how to change the filter on the furnace. Those kinds of things are invaluable. Somebody who's thorough, but is also a good teacher. This is your opportunity, and never skip the inspection. Unless you're like a home developer yourself, never skip the inspection because it's really an invaluable time.
Right.
How do you advise your seller clients about inspections, how to prep for inspections?
Well, we start talking about that before we even put it on the market. Get your repairs done so that, the inspector is not finding them. Much easier to deal with it beforehand and make a $30 repair than to deal with it. And they'll ask you for $300 credit for a $30 repair. So that's what I say. And expect to find things, and don't be offended if they find things, because that's just, how it is.
It is how it is. And I also ask them to really clean up the apartment, just like you would for a showing. Absolutely. And make sure that everything is accessible. So under the sink, take stuff out from under the sink so that the inspector can see whether there's leaks. Right. Have sometimes the electrical panels in a place that you can't find, or sometimes the furnace or the gas shut off is in a place that is locked. Make it accessible, because otherwise you're going to get a point like, I couldn't find it, so we didn't know where it was, or and that just adds to the complexity. So and going to a point you just made, Anne, which is so true, talking our clients into doing things proactively so that they get a good inspection. If you really refuse to do it proactively, agree with us that you're going to offer, and put that in the listing itself, you're going to offer a 1-year home warranty, so that somebody will come in and repair it when you've refused to. It's not the I would do at first, but if you really just don't want to do anything, do that. So
it comes down to things as simple even as light bulbs. Because an inspector, if he can't see it working, he's going to say, I don't know if this light switch works.
Right.
And that's really simple stuff.
I know. And people are like, I don't want to change my light bulbs. Do it. Change them. Change them out. Make sure they all work.
Right.
So what does an agent do during an inspection, Ann? What do you do when you're representing a buyer client when you're attending an inspection?
Oh, well, I don't follow them around like a dog, but I keep my ears open so that if anything comes up, I can put it in context. Like if the buyer's kind of freaking out about stuff that's normal, I'd put it in context, answer questions. If they bring in their own inspector who's like trying to beat his chest and show off how many problems he can find, I deal with that. But, again, remind them that every home has issues. Every home has to be maintained. So,
yeah. And when you're the seller's agent, what do you do?
Oh, then I really can't follow them like a dog, but I have my ear like this. And there are certain things that I will do. And here, I learned this over time. I make sure I say to the buyer, the buyer's agent, and the inspector, is there anything that you have a concern with that we can call the seller right now and figure out? Because otherwise, I've had things happen like they'll say the washer and dryer doesn't work. Well, that's because it was on an electrical switch that he turned off, so he couldn't turn on the washer. So there are every home has its funky stuff, right? Or they'll say, I couldn't get to this, or I couldn't see that. And we call the seller and fix it right then and there, so it never goes in the report and it's not an issue. So it's really important as the seller's agent, you are there. Now, I know in the suburbs, they aren't. In the suburbs, those agents don't attend the inspection.
They don't attend the show.
They don't. I swear, we work 3 times as hard here in the city.
I know. So there are follow-on inspections that a buyer may choose to do based on the findings of the original inspection, which is why we try to do, when we get a 5 or a 7-day inspection period, we try and put the inspection up front so that we can fill in with other inspections if they're needed. And these tend to be inspections on single-family houses.
Right. Well, mold, you were mentioning mold, and I like the way you explained it. When do you tell your buyer to do a mold inspection?
Well, first I find out from my buyer how sensitive the family is to allergens. So mold is an allergen. Mold's a health issue, but it's an allergen. But every house has mold. I got out of my shower this morning and I'm like, I am going to have to do something in that shower stall because there's little bits of mold. I mean, you got to deal with it. But one of the things that the inspector does is, so if the answer is they're very sensitive, well, then we're going to have the inspector be really clear on going around the house with those water
moisture meters,
gauges, ones you can tell where there's water. Right. And if there's a finding that the house is dry, then we don't have to do a mold inspection unless that's something that the buyer really wants. But if the house is wet, even if they're not terribly sensitive, then we're going to have a mold inspection. You're just going to have to do it because mold can be expensive to remediate. Well, how about you?
Radon is required with most relocation transactions, the corporate relocations. But sometimes people do radon in the city. I asked an inspector once, do you ever find a positive or problematic radon reading in a single family in the city? And the guy I always see out there doing them says no. Oak Park, on the other hand.
I have found radon in certain basements, in certain neighborhoods. They're a little further west. But there's mitigation. Radon is this gas, a naturally occurring gas from the decomposition of prehistoric animals. But it's cancer causing and it is serious. So if you have a basement and you live in certain neighborhoods, do it because
Right.
it is remediable. Go ahead.
It's very common in Oak Park, but yeah, you just mitigate it. And then the other thing I would say is, as much as you don't see it in the city, if you really feel compelled to spend a couple $100 for a radon, then do it. I'm not saying not do it. I'm just saying you don't frequently find it. And we do radon. Go ahead.
Above the 4th floor, the gas is dissipated, so you're never at risk. But go ahead.
Right. I was just going to say, we do radon disclosures if it's 3rd floor or lower. So
yeah.
Termite.
So
when do you do a termite?
I don't know that does Chicago have such a termite problem?
They don't in general. I heard once of somebody having termites on Concord Place. This was 30 years ago. Yeah,
Really?
in one of those townhomes on Concord Place. Yeah.
Oh, that's weird. So
that's like the only time I've ever heard of termites in the city. So maybe they brought in wood from, I don't know. It's weird.
But fireplace and chimney inspections are important, especially in older homes, because something goes wrong, the house can burn down. So you gotta have the fireplace and chimney inspection.
Highly recommend that.
Unless you're somebody who's never planning on turning on the fire. If you're not, well then okay. And a lot of people just turn those fireplaces into decorative things because they don't want the mess and whatever. But still, do that. And
totally agree.
And then for houses in a floodplain, you're going to want to understand how the pipes under your property deal with rainwater, the ones that go out, and we're talking about the city, the ones that go out to the sewer in the street. You may really want to know about that, but find out what's going on.
That's pretty common. Yeah. And some of these older homes with the older pipes, they need to be rotted out every year or two. So, I've had inspections where, they include that and request that. So yeah, I would definitely.
Okay. And to keep an inspection, so deals fall apart usually because of inspections and usually because the dealer's intransigence with respect to negotiating or addressing issues that come up in inspections. And the way to keep them from falling apart is disclose as much as you can about the condition of the property so that that's baked into the cost. So if somebody says, well, this is an older home, I should pay less for it. Yeah, that's included in the price. I factor that into the pricing. And then they'll go, oh.
Right.
And also to be enough flexible to do your homework, get your house ready, just like Ann was talking about, and to be a little flexible about things that come up. What about you, Ann? What are your thoughts?
Right. No, I think we hit it all. Well, we covered a lot today. We covered a lot.
Thank you as always, Ann. It was great talking to you.
Good to see you. Yeah. Thank you, everybody, for watching Monday Morning Coffee with Kyle and Ann. We will see you next week. Shoot us questions. Follow us on our social media. And, of course, reach out to us if you have a real estate need. Thanks again. Take care.
Thank you for your time. Bye.